Firstly, let's go over a theory that I've been seeing that I wanted to stop in its tracks. I mean, it's probably not gonna happen, because this video is probably gonna get like 6,000 views max, but either way, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who goes on to possess Chica. Susie has been dead for a long time once the game takes place, being dead for over 50 years or so. So there is literally no possible way that this girl could be Susie. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we released her spirit in the Happiest Day minigame, and she has only possessed Chica as far as we've known. Some assume that the Happiest Day minigame takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true. Considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that when FNAF 3 is over we get the good ending, to me that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place in FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria FNAF 6 does not have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released because, well, they had already been dealt with. So about this girl, let's go over some evidence about what we see on the poster. Firstly, there is her blonde hair. We know that it's blonde thanks to the rim lighting on the character being blonde at her hair, and while yes it may seem stupid, I think that the general consensus is that this girl is blonde. While rim lighting is the color of the light that it is instead of the color of the person, it also isn't going to be yellow on a darker surface, so this means that her hair is not black, eliminating Cassidy from the race. So this is not the spirit that was possessing Golden Freddy, or who a good amount of people consider the one you should not have killed, aka the vengeful spirit from Ultimate Custom Night. The girl in the middle is also wearing a jacket and what appears to be a denim skirt, fingerless gloves, white socks, and sneakers that light up Skechers style. Hashtag not sponsored, but like Skechers, hit me up, we can probably work something out. Now this may not be out of the ordinary to any of you, but this instantly reminded me of someone from a previous game. As I did mention this in another video, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, I get that she's been dead for longer than Susie, but just hear me out, okay? See, when we were playing Sister Location, we ended up getting the cutscene where Elizabeth is grabbed and killed by Baby, turning Baby's eye color from blue to green. This outfit that this mysterious girl is wearing is nearly identical to the one that Elizabeth was wearing in that minigame, aside from the light up shoes that wouldn't be available for another decade by real world standards. However, in FNAF in 1983, they also had discs that emitted sounds that altered the appearance of things in your brain. So a couple of light up shoes 10 years early doesn't really seem like that much of a stretch. The skirt is also identical to the skirt that Elizabeth wears in that cutscene, and the jacket could easily be covering up a similar styled shirt, which could be pushing the idea that Gregory having two stripes on his shirt is definitely important. But I want to talk about the color. You see, there is no real color on this girl. Bumping up the saturation, brightness, or vibrance actually shows that this girl is drawn in black and white. Have you ever heard of the saying, lack of evidence is sometimes itself evidence? Like maybe you're dealing with a professional killer, or that these thieves are overly cautious. Well, I think that this is a similar situation. Think about it. Why would they draw this girl in black and white? I mean, yeah, sure, she's backlit, but being backlit doesn't make you grayscale. This is an indication that the color of this girl's clothing can possibly mean something. Maybe Scott thought that he was too subtle with Gregory, only putting two stripes on his shirt, so this time he went for the full outfit including color. Speaking of color, there's also the matter of her shoes, the only part of her that isn't rimlit that has color. The color of her lights being purple and red. Purple obviously being a nod to William Afton, aka the Purple Guy, a character so synonymous with purple that I can't wear my favorite shirt on this channel now without being called a serial killer. And red, while misleading, actually does tie back to Elizabeth Afton in the form of Baby. Her entire outfit was red, including her bright red hair, and I mean, like, it seems fairly reasonable to assume that this girl has at least a connection to the Afton family, although there is another explanation for the red on her shoes. Give me a minute. Given that the other two humans on this screen, Vanny and Gregory, are also connected to the Aftons, we can guess that this is the case with the blonde girl as well. However, I don't think that the girl herself is Elizabeth. Here's the wow moment, alright? I think that this girl is possessed by Elizabeth. Yeah, I know, right? Hear me out. I know I said that that's not possible with Susie, but that's because we freed her, alright? There are 7 faces on the Blob, the secret antagonist of Security Breach. 4 of them have lit red eyes, and 2 of them don't. The 4 that do are Naked Endo, FNAF 1 Bonnie, FNAF 1 Chica, and Mangle, all of which are somehow present in some form or another in the Pizzaplex. Mangle is Roxy, Bonnie was Bonnie, Chica was Chica, and we fight multiple endos on multiple occasions. The 2 that aren't present, however, don't have their eyes lit up, Baby and the puppet. But we know that fire doesn't do anything to Remnant, clearly. I mean, Afton has burned, what, 3 times now, and none have stuck? And in another video, we determined that the spirits can only be freed when they get their unfinished business resolved, like the missing children in Happiest Day. Baby also doesn't seem too happy about burning in FNAF 6. She in fact says that she wants to make her daddy proud, and dying to fire would really do the opposite considering how many he survived. So, much like we suspect Michael could have, Elizabeth could have swapped bodies as well into one of the missing children that Vanny took. Hell, that could have been why Vanny took them in the first place. Afton wanted his daughter to have a vessel, hence why this one looks so much like Elizabeth's original body. This also explains why there is red on her shoes, because it's meant to represent the glowing red eyes that would be in the animatronic head. Remember, it's damn hard to kill an Afton for good, and in the books, Baby is really the one orchestrating everything, at least when it comes to the Afton amalgamation. Especially since this girl is facing away, her eyes could also be green, and I have a feeling that throughout the game we will see her eyes either flip-flop or start off blue and become green or something like that. Or, what I think would be the coolest way to do this would be having her eyes green normally, like if we see it in like a camera or something, but be blue in a mirror. So, here's how I think the story went. After the FNAF 6 fire, William gets a hold of Vanny in order to get his body back. He creates through the company a new location on top of the old one to hide his deeds, and then he sets himself free. In the process though, he notices that his daughter's spirit is also stuck. Since this is the first time they've been together since he put her in the basement of sister location, he decides to help her out, and causes Vanny to start abducting kids who look like his in an effort to rebuild his former family. Given that his youngest son is either still possessing him or now loose to the elements as well, the blonde girl is then kidnapped and Elizabeth finds her suitable host, so she's possessed. And now she follows Vanessa around in an effort to keep an eye on her and remind her that Afton is always watching. She starts manipulating her through encoded chats and messages, and hacks the FNAF AR animatronics to cause them to malfunction, and gets Vanessa promoted to security guard to keep an even closer eye on her. As a part of her observations, she starts therapy just like Vanessa does, and despite her telling the truth about her family history, it doesn't line up with the girl that she's possessed. Hence the one therapist calling out Client 46 for it, and her explanation about what happened to her family seeming to lack emotion, since after all she watched it happen as Baby instead of experiencing it as an actual child. After the collapse, she is either brought back by Afton requesting help with himself, or possibly also to help secure the vessel for Crying Child, who escaped along with a Michael possessed Glamrock Freddy. To me, this seems like a game about reuniting with lost brothers, lost hope, but most of all, reuniting a family. The Afton family. After all, we have all the characters now. The misguided father whose misdeeds cost him everything, his loyal daughter who wants to see her family back, the mother who now agrees and is a part of the father's plan, even if unwillingly so, and the sons, one too scared to do anything, and the older brother who helps him beat the circle that their father created, who rights their wrongs and makes up for their family's sins. What do you think? I feel like I'm pretty spot on with this one, and that this could be a great launching point for the next part of the series, but let me know what you think down below. The main issue I've been having is whether William is dead or alive. And there are a couple different things to consider here. Firstly, he is seemingly in a new endoskeleton, which would indicate that he's dead and Glitchtrap's consciousness is just being transferred into Burntrap Spot via the recharge station. But his head is clearly visible. Like, you can see his skull and his actual human jaw, meaning that he could still be holding on to this world via that head, especially given who we're talking about here. The most stubborn to ever grace our screens. This also can't be a new endo, and just the model that they're using for the others since it was easier and they could release the game faster. This seems to be indicated by the way that Burntrap walks. If this was a new endoskeleton, why would he be shambling like a zombie? But the claws and repaired sections to the actual endo also seem to indicate that this is also a new endo, and possibly even Glamrock Bonnie's. So there's a whole lot of wrong going on here. All the points are intersecting and it's not fun. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me, but I think I might have found a way to make it work. However, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. If this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, it would need to have broader shoulders and actually be shorter. Like, even scaling the Glamrock endo so that they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same and lined up, just they don't match. There are similarities, of course, between the two designs, but there aren't enough similarities where I can call this even really above 50%. There's also the issue of the muscles being woven throughout the body, or maybe those are nerve fibers. If it was just the head, I'd understand, since they could have just pulled the old Endo head and put it onto the new body. Since all the parts were intertwined, Afton's head would have come with it. But with the muscles throughout the rest of the Endo, that's way too intricate to actually have been placed there. And they would only be there and not dangling if it had been stuck there after being shoved full of machine parts. I don't think that they're taking super glue to glue these fibers back onto a new endoskeleton. If Afton was going to transfer his head to a new Endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of his body bits. It wouldn't. That's not how it works. Which would mean this would have to be Springtrap's endoskeleton, which also explains why it's so run down, why he shambles, and why he hardly has any casing. And Springtrap's design also seems to change from game to game. From FNAF 3 to FNAF 6 he was totally different, so him changing again in Security Breach seems like no big deal in comparison. It's basically normal for him to get a newer and seemingly scarier attempt at his design with a new game. And at least this has an understandable progression from the last game and even from FNAF 3, since it's more run down and not just a bigger head like Scraptrap. It's like he sold his soul for a bigger head and then the demon kind of made a joke out of it. The most reasonable assumption that I have for what happened though was that he was given the hands of Glamrock Bonnie since it has the claws, and just he wasn't given the entire endoskeleton. But then again, his arms have the bits of muscle and nerve fibers as well, which means that it would have to have been his old one, it would have to have been there from the start, it would have to be the arm of the old endoskeleton, which is a whole other conundrum because Scraptrap was missing an arm and Springtrap didn't have any casing on his foot, yet here we are. I just think that we have to kind of leave this one up to artistic license and accept that it's meant to be the same endoskeleton, just with a replacement part or two from Glamrock Bonnie instead of like the entire endoskeleton. It makes sense, honestly, and it's really the only reasonable explanation that we have. Unless the colors are wrong on the images that I was looking at and the bits on the hands are just meant to be melted casing, which is possible, but I doubt it. As for if he's wanted dead or alive, I think this version of Afton is actually finally dead. And honestly, I'm happy about that because it means that even if he's still here, we can kill him off for good. This is the most logical conclusion to me because, well, other than him basically being only a head, this guy has had multiple backslides of, oh, I'm dead, just kidding. And this time around, while we instantly predicted that he had indeed survived, I think that Scott is finally flipping the narrative on us. We predicted it, so it's not gonna happen. Afton is no longer connected to his body, as we can clearly see from the formation of Glitchtrap. And Glitchtrap being created would only be possible if Afton died, since the one you should not have killed was dead set on keeping him breathing. But Burntrap, this guy doesn't even have lungs anymore. So yeah, this version of Afton's body is dead, but his consciousness lives on. Like how there's like the conspiracy that Walt Disney froze his head. Yeah, well, that's kind of what they did with Glitchtrap. And then that programming was probably uploaded into his old host, or I guess vessel, since I've been rewatching Supernatural. Basically, this guy would be impossible if he wasn't just Afton's code loaded onto an endoskeleton. Plus, the eyes are clearly robotic this time around with purple pupils, rather than the previous iterations that had seemingly real eyes, Afton's actual eyes, since it was in suit mode after he got snapped. And opening his head in those like secret FNAF 3 screens revealed that it was actually like his eyes because they were seemingly in the same place. So, all in all, here's the story of Burntrap as far as I can tell. During the FNAF 6 fire, Afton passes out. Not dead, but still somehow alive thanks to the one you should not have killed, Crying Child. This leads to the events of Ultimate Custom Night that sees Afton stuck in his own mind trying to escape so that his spirit can move on. But Crying Child, represented by a golden bear like the one who crushed his skull, tries to keep him stuck, until eventually he throws everything that he has at him. 50-20 mode. After being so weakened by the fire, William survives this attack on his mind, and Crying Child's spirit is set free, hence the spasming bear at the end of that mode. That's him burning as the fire sets his soul free. William's soul then latches onto the nearest thing that it can find, one of the hard drives in the storage room that the Scraptrap animatronic was being kept in. One that gets scanned to create the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience as the company tries to rebuild its reputation. Then, not wanting to waste the land that was bought for their company, Freddy, Fazbear Entertainment begins building a new pizzaplex on top of their old location. Whether this is due to Glitch Trap possessing someone higher up at the company through the game or someone just wanting to save money is up in the air, but the remains of the FNAF 6 simulated pizzeria are buried under the pizzaplex's foundation. That's when Vanessa comes along, our player character from Help Wanted, who reassembles the 16 cassette tapes in an effort to destroy Afton once and for all, but ultimately fails. When our mind is distracted by following Tape Girl's instructions, William locks us in our mind and in the Princess Quest minigame that would later get ported to an arcade cabinet for insurance purposes. And by insurance, I mean like insurance on Vanessa so that she wouldn't easily be able to escape. As Vanny, William then uses the animatronics to dig out his body and put his old endoskeleton in a recharge station so that when he's able to transfer himself back into it, he'll be able to move. After all, at this point, he's not a spirit, but simply coding, which means that in another game, if he is still alive, we'll actually be able to kill him off. He also gives his old suit some upgrades in the form of Glam Rock Bonnie's hands and right foot. Why would he not go with a new, more powerful endo, you ask? Because it's William and his Spring Bonnie suit. It's his body in there. Of course he'd want it back. He's been that way for like at least 40 years at this point. It's all he knows. Then as Gregory and Freddy jump down into the pit, William can sense it. Either because he's an animatronic, because one or both of them are meant to be his kids, or something else, he activates his body even though it's not fully charged and tries to take over Freddy. He's not fully charged, hence the shambling, which Gregory ends up preventing with fire, which has surely traumatized Afton by now, and considering how he's only code, this time fire would actually finish the job. Eventually, the place actually catches on fire and Freddy and Gregory escape, but the blob grabs hold of William. Whether it was to save him or seal his fate is unknown, but this almost certainly isn't the end of William Afton's story. Last time I came to the conclusion that this mysterious girl is one of this round's missing children that got possessed by Elizabeth, and while I do still firmly believe that, this got me thinking, who else could it possibly be? We asked you loyal subscribers on a community post, and the overwhelming conclusion was that the majority of you are wrong. Okay, just kidding. A lot of you though seem to think that this could be Vanessa as a ghost. And despite the fact that Vanny's eyes are on the poster, I think that you might actually be onto something. So let's talk about it. Although I just need to put this out there, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who possesses Chica, okay? Susie has been dead for a very long time when this game takes place, being dead over 50 years or so, and while that doesn't really matter in the context of FNAF, there's still no way it could be. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we released Susie's spirit in the Happiest Day minigame. Some assume that this takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true, considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that's when FNAF 3 is over and we get the good ending. So to me, that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place around the time of FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria from FNAF 6 didn't have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released, because they had already been dealt with. So in regards to this theory, the first thing I need to disprove is that it's impossible, since Vanny's eyes are in the corner. But just because we see some faded eyes, it doesn't mean that a spirit cannot be separate from a body. I mean, look at Afton, for example. This man was code that possessed a human while his body was stuck in an underground pizzeria. So there is a precedent for their body being around without their soul. The issue in my mind comes around when we see that since Vanny's eyes are glowing, her body is operational, which kinda shoots this theory between the eyes until you remember that there are multiple things possessing Vanny's body. One version of Glitch Trap's code and then Vanessa herself. So we can go one of two ways with this now. The fact that Vanny's body may solely be Glitch Trap now, or the fact that Glitch Trap is still operating in Vanessa, but Burn Trap is also Afton. He's back as Afton, okay? Either way, there are two versions of Afton in operation right now. One of them is coded and the other is possibly not, but we can't really be sure. And William isn't the only person to have a coded version. I mean, remember Princess Quest? The game designed to keep Vanessa at bay while William wreaks havoc as Vanny? I mean, the Princess Quest ending, otherwise known as the best ending, is the only ending to have 3 stars. It had some significance, but What? It's a question we've been asking ever since Security Breach ended. Another one is what happened to the Princess Quest game machines located around the Pizzaplex. It seems reasonable that at the very least the one in Roxy's salon was destroyed, and if the Pizzaplex is in ruins, then the others must have been destroyed too, right? Well, if that is the case, what happens to Vanessa's spirit? Like, is it released, or does it fade away into nothing? It's not fading away, not with unfinished business still afoot. The spirit of Vanessa had to go somewhere, but where could it go? Well, this could be some random girl that Vanessa just grabbed off the street or that was walking by, or it could still be one of the missing children that was trapped in the building. Either way, whoever they are, it's really of little consequence if this is really Vanessa possessing them. Okay, the only thing that matters in this context is that Vanessa's possessing them, not who the kid is, I'm guessing. The precedent is set in this universe where one person can possess multiple things if one version that is possessing something is coded and the other is a spirit. So, this is definitely possible. The character on the poster is also actually completely grayscale, aside from the rim lighting thanks to her flashlight and the color of her lights on the shoes that she's wearing. These are also colored purple and red, colors that in this game specifically are linked to William because it's purple. I mean, I can't even wear a shirt on this channel now without being called the purple guy. So yeah, purple equals Afton, Burn Trap, William, whatever. And then Vanny with her giant glowing red eyes are also on this poster, okay? It's like they wanted us to make this connection. But if they wanted us to make the connection, does that mean that this is all intentional, or is it mostly just a red herring or MacGuffin to keep us away from the real story? And at 10, Princess Quest. This is a theory that I truly believe and that I'm pretty sure has been all but officially confirmed. Vanessa is certainly the princess that we play as in Princess Quest, since the game was used to lock her away in the first place, both in Help Wanted as well as in the first version of the game in Security Breach, which is just a recreation of the one that we play in the Help Wanted mobile port. To further solidify this connection, there are lore bags mentioning how Princess Quest is an arcade machine that for some reason was ported to that medium from mobile, and they couldn't figure out why. So this is clearly the game that we dealt with in Help Wanted, and since we play as Vanessa in Help Wanted, it only makes sense that Vanessa is once again the princess that we're playing as, who inevitably gets caught by Glitch Trap, and then we have to fight our way back into our body, as indicated by the sword we get in chapters 2 and 3. The biggest piece of evidence here is the final door. That is in essence an exact 16-bit replica of the door that we get shut behind in the true Help Wanted ending, which again, we do as Vanessa. So it's not Cassidy. Stop saying that. In at 9, relationship. Gregory, our player character in the game, is certainly a mysterious kid, and Vanessa, the night security guard who's also Vanny, is just as confusing. But at least we know more about her story, being our player from FNAF VR. But what the most mysterious thing about this game is the relationship between Gregory and Vanessa. Like, what the heck is up with these two? Vanessa spends the whole game trying to lock Gregory in the security room, and then Vanny comes to kill us, as she does in the worst ending. But then, after curing her, we don't even ask questions, we just go eat ice cream on a hill with her. So if we're so quick to do that, then there's no way she's a stranger. It genuinely seems like they're family, which would explain why he knew something was off with her, but she can't be his mother or sibling because when she locks us in the security office, she tells us that we'll wait until your parents or the police arrive. If it was a sibling, she would have said our parents or even mom and dad, but with her saying your parents, that means that they aren't hers, making our options limited. And she's definitely not our mom, since if she was, she would have said your father, which is weird because she also seemingly doesn't know Gregory's name until it starts coming out of his Fazwatch, or at least that's how she says that she knows his name to Freddy in Parts and Service, but then she could have been lying. And at 8, aware. Now we may believe that Vanessa is unaware of her dual personality, that it would make sense if she blacks out while William takes over as Vanny, or however this weird pseudo-possession thing works. I don't know, it's sentient code possessing a human. All normal bets are out the window. However, That is not the case at all. As we learned from CD number 11, it doesn't matter what order you find these endgame CDs in, you just need to find 11 of them and you are able to hear this. And we get our first indication that Vanessa is truly Vanny, at least first indication from the tapes. About halfway through this tape, the therapist says that's true. So, on your breaks, it looks like you were shopping for a costume. You purchased some fake fur material. What are you going to make? Then Vanessa mutters indistinctly, you can't really make out what she says. And then the therapist replies with, what was that? Did you say the costume is a secret? Why is that? To which Vanessa replies, I can't talk about this. He said he would always be watching. He could be here or there or anywhere in between. That line of he said he would be watching surely means that she has some idea about what's going on, especially when she's openly talking about how she has plans on making a costume, or at least mutters about it. So if she's aware but doesn't fight it, does that mean that she's accepted Afton as a part of her? Possibly. In at 7, Bonnie. This is an interesting theory from Reddit user u/was-that-the-bite-of-87 on the Game Theorist subreddit a month ago, which actually MatPat just talked about in his last Game Theory on Sunday. The post didn't get much love, but it's certainly interesting. Was that the bite of _87 asks if the burn trap animatronic is using the disassembled Bonnie. Quote from the Reddit post. So, I have a theory that Burn Trap is using the disassembled Bonnie robot. Let me explain. So you know how Burn Trap has an intact animatronic foot even though no other Spring Trap or Scrap Trap never had them? Management might have disassembled Bonnie, and there could have been a body of Glitch Trap infected person in there, which explains the dead rotting corpse, and Afton could have taken over, but is weak, which explains why he needs a recharge station. That is all I have for now. It's kind of rough, but considering how Afton's body is still in that robot, which wouldn't be necessary if his consciousness is only in Glitch Trap or if it was transferred into this endo, I don't think that this is actually like the canon. Like I think that if Afton's body wasn't in the robot, you'd be onto something, and like MatPat would also be onto something because he also agrees that this should be Glam Rock Bonnie's endo. But his body being in there has to be Scrap Trap, but like heavily burnt. Like sure, he has another arm, but they could have just added an arm onto him. But like the main body of it would have to be Scrap Trap, unless we have like a really messed up scenario going on, which is possible, but it's a kid's game, so I don't know. I mean, like, would Vanny take Afton's rotting corpse and put it in a new endo? I don't think so. I personally don't think so. I think that they just replaced the arms and the legs so that he could stand, because he didn't have his actual human feet anymore. That's just what I think. And at 6, CRT effect. Now, while most of the mystery surrounding the CRT effect we get on our screen when Vanny is around is directed at Gregory currently, like why does he see it like that? The bigger question in my opinion is why does Vanny cause that effect? We see it happen to the security cameras as well that the therapist describes to client 46, because she's only human. Vanny is only a person. There is no real reason for her to cause these sort of effects. Like, yes, she has some form of sentient code possessing her somehow, but by no means should there be a reason why she is causing the cameras to screw up when she's near them, including Gregory's eyes. It explains why the animatronics can't see her, or why Freddy at least can't see her until he gets Roxy's eyes, but while the camera effect explains things, it still needs to be explained, because there is seemingly no way that it should actually be possible. Sentient code possessed or not, because either way, she's human. She bleeds when she falls down, or at least she should, but given that the game is designed for kids to be able to play it, there isn't really any blood, but still, she should only be human, right? Halfway through into number 5, Ultimate Custom Night. I think we all know where William Afton he deserves to go, okay? One-way trip downstairs, or as Henry said, although for one of you, the darkest pit in hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. I'm still waiting, Afton. And you know what? We thought we had gotten rid of him. We thought that William was in hell for Ultimate Custom Night. However, this proves to not be the case when the Man Room 1280 was released, showing us that instead William had only been in a coma like his son years before. However, this time winning was him waking up instead of dying, only dying when he explodes in the Fazbear warehouse and creates Glitch Trap, but apparently this is no longer what happened. Because did William really possess a hard drive and become sentient code, or is there something more going on here? While yes, weird things in the series can be explained away with it's FNAF, or like a dream theory of something, but like, no, I'm not doing that, okay? That's the coward's way out, and I'm not a coward for the most part. Although I don't want to play horror games. But like, just look, if Afton is in Burn Trap, he shouldn't be able to be Glitch Trap. The Ultimate Custom Night is just Burn Trap being in the pod. It's what he's seeing when he's in the pod. So everything we thought we knew about Ultimate Custom Night doesn't count anymore. And that's hella annoying because, you know what? We thought we had something. We thought that we had finally figured out one thing about this series. Then you know what Scott says? Up yours! And at 4, Afton. In the best ending, there are quite a few confusing moments. The most confusing one for me at least is the idea that Gregory would go get ice cream with Vanessa once she's done trying to kill him. Like, why would you do that? Some seem to think that it's because they're related or representing the dead Afton kids. And thanks to MapPad, there's a little more evidence to this. The ice cream that Vanessa gets while on the hill is very reminiscent of the ice cream cone that gets Elizabeth lured into Baby's arm grabbing or scooping range, or however you want to say it. The cone with the tall soft serve on top kind of looks like the cone with the soft serve on top that Baby presents to Elizabeth in order to lure her closer and then subsequently kill her. Is that evidence or just a coincidence? No idea whatsoever, but it's FNAF, so I'm going with it ain't a coincidence, especially because Crying Child also has ice cream that could be symbolic, so that's a little too many coincidences in my opinion. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Wanted, dead or alive. Forget it. Because, yeah, you know what? This is actually a good question in this case, since I don't know if Afton is alive or dead inside of the Burn Trap suit, okay? He was alive in the Spring Trap and Scrap Trap suits, as we learned from the man in room 1280, because he was possessed by the one you should not have killed. But did he finally get put down after FNAF 6, or is he still kicking? Okay, his body is still present within the Burn Trap suit, or at least it partially is. His skull is still there. So, what's the consensus here? I don't know. The existence of Glitch Trap seems to imply that he's dead in the suit, but Ultimate Custom Night suggests that the one you should not have killed is still possessing him, which would be what he sees in the recharge station, which would mean that he's alive, and not because of the recharge station, but because the one you should not have killed would still be possessing him, which they would only do if he was still alive, since if we're being honest, the only reason that Afton was possessed was so that he could suffer, so being possessed after he's dead isn't really gonna do anything for Crying Child, because that Crying Child is definitely the one you should not have killed, not Cassidy. I'm saying it, okay? It's a thing. And the one you should not have killed would not be controlling Burn Trap to take over Freddy and turn things evil. It just goes against what we know about the character. So, I don't know at this point. I feel like he's probably still alive, but like just barely. Although, that means that Glitch Trap shouldn't exist. Penultimately, in at number 2, 2 Vannies. The rooftop ending is unlocked by exiting the Pizzaplex through the prize counter and then clicking leave. This will prompt Freddy to burn the place to the ground, and the two of you can go escape onto the roof. I don't really know what Freddy's original plan was. I guess maybe you just go down the fire escape. But when Gregory gets to the roof, Vanny is seemingly there waiting for us, somehow. She grabs us, but then Freddy, with his new eyes, sees Vanny and jumps off the roof with her, causing them both to fall. They both seemingly die, and we take off Vanny's mask, revealing Vanessa behind it. We look confused, and then the comic ends. However, before actually ending, another couple panels are shown, with Vanessa standing up on the rooftop looking down at what happened. This is probably one of the most confusing endings in the game, since it shows us that there are apparently 2 Vanessas. And while we seemingly knew about the whole double life thing, we hadn't really exactly seen these 2 characters in the same room, so we thought that they were one and the same. And in the Princess Quest ending, we seemingly save Vanny. The simplest answer to that is that there may not be 2 Vanessas, but could simply be Vanessa's soul looking down on her body. We know that souls are actually things in this universe thanks to FNAF 3's cutscenes where a purple guy gets spring trapped, and those souls had physical forms that caused him to freak out. So this could just be Vanessa regretting all the things that she did as Vanny, hence the fire, because Remnant supposedly needs fire to burn. And finally, in at number 1, Vanny's ending. In the canon ending to this game, the one where we fight against William Afton in the form of Burn Trap, in that ending, we don't really see what happens to Vanny. While yes, Burn Trap might have been dealt with, we don't know if this releases Vanny or if she's still under his control. Plus, we don't know just what she was actually doing when all this went down. When there's a canon ending to a game, you expect the main antagonist of the game to be there, right? So like, when Freddy and Gregory are just sitting on that hill, chilling in Cedar Rapids, what comes next for the series? This is a question I genuinely just don't have an answer to, and I don't think I could have one, because there are so many possibilities now that I think it's practically impossible for me to guess. And I think that's the point. Since there's someone taking over from Scott for the next game, I'm sure that Scott wanted to leave them with the ability to go wherever they wanted to next, whether that be with William as the main villain, hence his physical form, God I hope not, Vanny being the villain, hence her not being there in the end, or just the Blob, since, you know, it was introduced and then intended to be revealed in the Final Fantasy Friends book, but then delays made the whole thing inevitable. Yeah, okay, you get it, alright? That's my guess as to why the ending is so obscure, but still, what happened to Vanny? No clue. Now first, your instinct may be that this is impossible, okay? And honestly, that was my first instinct too. I mean, Susie's been dead since like 1985 with the missing children's incident, and she ends up possessing Chica, who is then set free and happy as a day. So like, how is it even remotely possible? Well, some say that the happiest day minigame that sets Susie free really takes place at the very end of the timeline, no matter when that ends up being, meaning that at the time of security breach, none of the original 5 animatronics have actually been released, which means that if we go off the fact that this girl is possessed, this is entirely possible. I mean, Susie is the first of the missing children, and definitely seemingly the most important one, given the fact that we see her as a kid in the Fruity Maze minigame's reflection, and I mean, even if the one you should not have killed is Cassidy, it's just a blown out version of her face. But the puppet is present for the happiest day minigame, and they get released in FNAF 6, right? There's one key detail, however, that really makes me unsure. Something that's been in the back of my brain for a while, but it may make a few people mad because it involves using the novels. In the original novel trilogy, starting with the Silver Eyes, the Funtime animatronics are injected with Remnant made from the original 5 possessed animatronics, meaning that if Remnant does indeed contain part of the soul instead of just being metal that once had a soul, the original 5, despite being set free in happiest day, no matter when it takes place, could still have the slightest bit of spirit form in the main world, I guess. Which could also explain why Molten Freddy had to show up along with Scrap Baby, also known as Elizabeth, in FNAF 6, unless we just assume that there was a slight bit of Elizabeth remaining in Ennard after she left, or if we assume that Henry wanted to get rid of all traces of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, or all things that Afton created, which at that point also included his son. That's a lot of assumptions. So without assuming anything, but also while using the books to get some further context, which some people don't like, it is possible that after they burned in FNAF 6, much like Afton, Susie's spirit was set loose. Not free, like it didn't move on, but it was just loose in the atmosphere, willing to grab onto whatever it could. Or that it merged into the blob, and then the fire that Gregory causes that caused the cave-in ended up setting her soul loose again, and then she possessed a person. I don't think that there is really any explanation that could mean that this is Susie's original body. That seems fundamentally impossible. So whoever this is, if she is a character we've already met prior to this game, she would have to be possessed. Unless this is an entirely new character, which is absolutely possible. I mean, it doesn't have to be someone that's already established, obviously, but I mean, it's fun to speculate and theorize nonetheless. Another indication that I've seen a few people point out is that Chica does actually also appear on this poster, which is certainly an interesting choice. I mean, she was certainly the most, popular enemy animatronic in this game, and the other animatronics are very out of commission even before the collapse. I mean, Roxy couldn't see, and Monty was split in two. But since we can't really take anything in FNAF at first glance, is this actually meant to indicate the identity of our mystery girl? It's certainly a possibility. I mean, the only ones who really know are Steelwool, Scott, and whoever made the poster. But given Chica's state, I'm guessing that this is just meant to indicate a timeline, that this occurs after the collapse rather than at some other time prior to the game starting, and then maybe they rebuild the Pizzaplex, or maybe even long after it ends. Because I mean, look at her, okay? Chica has got to be probably one of the most resilient animatronics in the group, because she's still kicking despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then having a building land on top of her, and she still has most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed, some of it was cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted, possibly due to the fire we were using to kill Burntrap, or maybe it's just because like a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed, and then she thought that it was just really hot pizza. I don't know. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left. Remember that, I've made that mistake. And she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing on her midriff and right arm is gone, but other than that, she is still fairly intact. Her endoskeleton is, at the very least, especially compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone spilt frosting all over her face. Yeah, I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But other than that, there aren't really any connections between her and Susie. Probably the most resilient animatronic in the group because, again, she's still kicking. Susie was possessing the yellow Chica, so I feel like this Chica being white is meant to show us that this is not going to be like the same sort of situation. So I don't think that relating this Chica to that Chica or this Chica to Susie is really logical in this case. I think it's a bad idea, okay? No, I guarantee you that this is not going to be Susie, and if it is, I'm going to quit FNAF. Look, yes, she's blonde, and yes, Susie was blonde, but she was also blonde in 1985, okay? It's been like 50 years since the missing children's incident in the games, and the original Chica animatronic was destroyed, and Susie's spirit was released, okay? Happiest Day does not take place at the end of the timeline. The pigtails on this girl are very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair, and while we may not be able to see her face, I feel like it is possible that she does have green eyes, okay? Because anyone with blonde hair instantly makes me think of Elizabeth Afton, not Susie. Since Elizabeth has more impact to the story than Susie, and even in the books, Baby ends up having more of an impact thanks to the Afton amalgam. And considering the blob that got introduced in this game is very much similar to that amalgam, this still makes the most sense to me, okay? But I figured that I'd go through the possibilities in separate videos just for good measure, okay? I'm not sure. Who do you think this little girl is, alright? Do you think it's Elizabeth's spirit? Do you think it's Vanessa's spirit? Do you think it's Susie's spirit? Or just some random stupid kid who wandered into a house of horror? Be sure you let me know down below. I'm still adamant on Elizabeth, but I don't know, maybe it's just a stupid kid. And honestly, you know what, if it's a stupid kid, they deserve it. In a 10 Nightmare arm. The arm at the end of the initial security breach teaser drove the internet mad for like a week before we ultimately just said we'll wait for the next trailer. And with the most recent, which was the last trailer before the game's release, we still had nothing about that arm. And I guess, I can understand why, but it was still frustrating. So you can guess that when someone tagged me on Twitter at Centimeter Monroe and showed me a picture comparing the security breach arm to the arm of Nightmare Freddy, I'd be intrigued. So intrigued, in fact, that I actually got angry because if it's ever intended on being a Nightmare Freddy arm, I'm leaving, okay? These animatronics are perfectly content being illusions, okay? Or in a child's imagination running wild while his body is trying to save his life. But still, what the hell? How do these versions of Afton in an animatronic keep changing? They all have his body in it, so they must be intentionally the same endo. But then it keeps changing designs still. In a 9-Stitch Wraith. Seeing the Stitch Wraith was very unlikely, but I would have certainly enjoyed an appearance of the character, even if it was in a nightmare sequence like I had suggested in other videos, or maybe it was a brief passerby. I mean, it's not impossible, but I do think that that one wasn't likely to happen. Even in a future DLC, I don't think it would happen. But it would certainly be interesting to be looking out a window or something in the Pizzaplex, although there's not really any windows, but it would still be interesting to see him out of the corner of our eye. However, we did used to believe that the Afton arm was in fact the Stitch Wraith, and some fans believe that Burntrap will actually turn into the game universe's version of the Stitch Wraith, which wouldn't rely on Phineas tag art and would probably work better for the story of the games, but I don't know. Based on everything we've seen, I don't think that William will be losing his face anytime soon. But what do you think? Do you think that William, or I guess Burntrap, will end up being the Stitch Wraith of the FNAF game universe, or do you think that we'll never see the Stitch Wraith in the games? Be sure to let me know down below. And it ain't not Afton. Some thoroughly believe that this animatronic, this new version of the Spring Bonnie animatronic, to not be William, and instead possibly be Henry Emily, William's business partner and father of his first victim. Why do they think this? No idea. However, I can kind of see why. But simply, it's just due to inconsistencies. Since seemingly the endo for this version of Springtrap also has the same endo as the Glamrock animatronics, or the ones that we see in what is honestly the scariest part of the game. Those are the only real endos that we see. Since if this was Afton, the endo should be the first version of the endoskeleton. My explanation for this is simply because they had this model for the endo in the files and they were rushing to release something after already delaying the game multiple times. So they used it and added the Springtrap bits onto it. And since he's so destroyed, it's really difficult to determine whether it's the same design as Scraptrap. And since Henry was also in the FNAF 6 location, it could be him technically, or at least he was around the location, but I still doubt it. And it's 7 connections. Now, whether or not she knew about this, Vanessa's recommendation for the night guard position came from the top of Fazbear Entertainment, which does end up confusing plenty of people in the administration, as we learned about from various duffel bags. She has no security experience and she was transferred from another part of the company, but nevertheless she still got the job despite multiple people saying that they wouldn't go forward with hiring her, which honestly, let's be real here, probably led to their deaths. So who on earth is the one ordering her promotions? Seemingly, we have no idea. We could assume that it's William, but he's currently plugged into a charging station in the basement, so it would have to be someone who knew her, knew Afton's interest in her, made her a VR tester so that she could get possessed, and then made her a security guard so Afton could get her to do what he needed. But who could that possibly be? When I have a solid answer, I'll be sure I'll let you know. And at 6, AI. It is unknown how Glitchtrap was able to leave his body for the events of FNAF VR, or how he re-enters it for the events of Security Breach. Based on everything we know about this series, it should be impossible for Glitchtrap to exist if Afton is still inside Burntrap, especially if the one you should not have killed is keeping him alive still, since that would prevent Afton from escaping from his body. And despite a line of dialogue in the trailer clearly coming from some sort of William Afton, Burntrap never speaks throughout his entire encounter, which only makes this more confusing, since if he talked, we would know that he isn't an AI, but he doesn't talk, so we can't be sure if he is or not, since not talking doesn't exactly mean that he's an AI, since people can also choose not to talk. And the AIs in this game also talk, so at this point, we have no idea if he is or isn't an AI, which is really annoying. Although, I still believe that the one you should not have killed is Gregory, not Cassidy, but you know, MatPat doesn't want to talk about it. He won't respond to my Twitter, okay? Or my Instagram. Or literally anything at this point. MatPat, please. Let's talk about this. Halfway through into number 5, Client 46. Some people believe Gregory to be the mysterious Client 46, such as myself, able to be found in the retro CDs available at the end of the game, using Roxy's eyes. However, others suggest that perhaps this Client 46 is Vanny, since Vanny is an alternate persona of Vanessa, and Vanessa is her only other client with retro CDs in the game. Client 46 doesn't talk, but is adept at hacking, something we, at least before the game came out, associated with Vanny. However, I have a few issues with this theory. I don't know if therapists dealing with DID, or dissociative identity disorder, would classify other personalities as separate clients, since I'm pretty sure sentient code-possessed humans wouldn't really be expected, even in the FNAF world, at least by the people in the FNAF world, so any therapist would most likely classify this as a case of DID. And I'm not sure if they classify other personalities as other clients, or if it's like the same client number but different notes. There's also the fact that Client 46 is seen talking to someone in a bunny costume, or at least the costume itself. However, the cameras are glitching out, indicating that the bunny is Vanny. And also the fact that Vanessa leaves in disc 12, or around disc 12 at least, and 46 doesn't end until disc 16. And at 4, survivors. It seems like everyone we've seen the true ending to Security Breach, including Burntrap, are survivors of the FNAF 6 fire, which means that this would indeed be Scraptrap or Springtrap, but as to how he changed again, I have no idea. How do we know that this is everyone from FNAF 6 and not just William? Well, the Blob, which is a massive sized proportion of wire tentacles, because of course it is, and animatronic parts with possession of many glowing eyes. It has a whole load of them, okay? It has a mask that is identical to that of Funtime Freddy, with black eyes, pinkish red glowing pupils, and like the endo face that reveals to have face plates rather than tubes, which is already a whole other can of worms that I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. The Blob's body is a large mass of wire, like tentacles, and like it's basically what the the sister location endos were made out of. However, it also appears to be a larger version of Molten Freddy from the Pizza Simulator Fire. Okay, but it's far bigger, and it has parts of other animatronics like Circus Baby, the Puppet, Chica for some reason, Mangle, Bonnie, and several Endo Mark IIs. And you know what? There's probably others, which again is a whole other can of worms that I don't want to touch. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Sacrifice. There's a theory that Gregory from this game is intended to be a robotic version of Crying Child, which in all honesty makes sense. However, if this is the case, we can build off this and maybe suggest that the real intention behind this game wasn't to bring William back in any capacity, but rather to make Gregory, his son, more like him by sacrificing Vanessa. Now, for some reason, everything seems to work out for Gregory, right? Despite going about this in what is probably the worst way possible, since staying in Freddy's room again would probably have been the winner's choice, Gregory doesn't end up dying this entire time, and in one ending he even stays so that he can kill Vanny and put an end to the missing children. However, honestly speaking, this just feels all kinds of wrong to me. Like, why did Vanny disassemble Freddy, but then leave the controller on the desk instead of taking it with her when she went to chase Gregory? And why even worry about chasing him yourself when you have f***ing robots that can grab him for you? This all seems like too many coincidences, especially for a FNAF game, which could be why this ending is required for the Princess Quest ending. Symbolic reasons. He can choose to be good or choose to be evil in this moment. And Afton was fine with sacrificing Vanessa. I'm pretty sure about that. Penultimately, in at number 2, Finally Dead. The true ending is seemingly one of the scariest parts of the game because it contains a load of things, okay? After making your way into Burntrap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Afton's newest form, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by pressing 3 buttons outside of 3 monitors to burn Burntrap. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come for Gregory and then use the doors to temporarily lock them out, and then other things. When Burntrap is finally burned, the blob, which was that tentacle monster thing that I was talking about, attacks him to make sure that he doesn't get away. Freddy and Gregory will then be shown escaping and sitting on a hill together. However, if the blob actually does kill William is a totally different question. There are death animations in the game files, however they aren't used in the ending, so we can't count it as canon. Plus, the whole I always come back thing should have ended with this game from what we understood about the series, but he came back nonetheless, so even logical conclusions aren't going to help us. And if the blob was going to ensure William's death, it would then have to ensure its own death, so I doubt that it did it. God, just please let William finally be dead for the love of everything in life. Please. And finally, in at number 1, Comes Back. I think that unfortunately Afton being resurrected or returning in some form or another is inevitable. I don't get why, okay? I think at this point we can move on from this killer. We have a new one, but a load of people seem to think that we need Afton back again. I put a poll up on like the Vanny facts lists that we know during the premiere. And even though the video is about Vanny, only 51% of people thought that she was better than Glitch Trap. And I think that speaks volumes as to who the favorite in this series is. Like, I get that we've grown up with Afton as the killer, okay, but hell, we didn't even know his name until Sister Location. Until that point, we were calling him after a frickin' color. Okay? We've known this man's name for like 5 games. That's literally half the series. That's half the time the series has been out. The first 4 games didn't have him. Okay? He was just like, he wasn't even a character in the first game. Just a mysterious man that Matt Pat compared to Nathan Dunlap. Okay? Just end him. Finally, please.